Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to um, Beyond the Table, a show where we just hang out and we get to talk with people in the industry about the games we love. And it's so great to have you back on, Steve. It was such a great talk the first time when we talked about Castles and Crusades and the birth of Aihrde and the Hermit. And so I figured we're doing an entire month of Castles and Crusades on the Iconic Production channel. I figured it was great to just have you back on.
Well, I love being on, and thanks for having me.
We actually talked about I did my overview of Castles and Crusades and Aired. I felt like I had great insider information from our discussions both on stream and off and at GameholeCon. And then this week I talked about the Castle Keeper's Guide, which is fantastic, by the way. I think
Thank you.
it is. I said that for people who even aren't playing Castles and Crusades, this is a great GM resource. It harkens back to the series that you guys did where you were doing all the world building books and with Gary, and there's that whole section of NPCs through land as treasure and mass combat is just great for anyone who's a GM.
I'm a huge fan of organizing the NPCs because I use them a lot.
Yeah.
So that information was necessary, and I love the land is treasure. That was a chapter I wrote, and I absolutely love the whole feudal structure, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
cool to see it at the table.
Um, on just a complete random side note, I find it fascinating that when you look at the fall of the Roman Empire and like all of the little dominoes that kind of like
Yeah,
led to the fall of the Roman Empire, you can see the feudal system emerging
yeah.
piece by piece by piece.
It's really kind of cool. It's very, very fascinating,
Yeah.
and it's nice. Feudalism and manorialism is a really difficult thing to kind of quantify. There's some really good books on it. Ferdinand Block, I think Block wrote a really good discussion of feudalism, but it's hard to kind of get your head around.
Yeah.
But it's such a fascinating system that you almost don't want to skip it in your role playing games. You really,
Yeah.
it's so cool.
It is.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just tailor made for RPGs.
It really is. And another thing that I appreciate is, first of all, I was crowing about the tyranny of rules sidebars that kind of just keep repeating through here. I have a buddy who runs great games, but he always wants to get the rule exactly right. And so we'll be in the
Right.
middle of something and it'll grind to a halt. And I'm like, bud, you gotta just keep like make a ruling at the table and come back to us
Right.
afterwards and say, here's how we're gonna do it going
Yeah, it's
forward.
funny. We had this discussion on the stream, I think Tuesday on on my AMA stream, because that's one of the things we're doing in the MNT. Jeremy, who we brought on in the last few months as a production assistant, is working really hard on bringing things kind of in getting them into line and everything. And he keeps trying to really quantify stuff, and I'm like, let's not go overboard with that stuff because we want to leave the CK a lot of freedom of movement to
Yeah.
do what they want to do. On the other hand, he's got a very valid point that people who are coming to the game for something that's a little bit more stratified, like fifth edition, that's a little bit more controlled, what you can and can't do. They're going to be looking for that clarity, and if they can't find it, they're going to get frustrated. So that the thing becomes is how do you balance that, without restrictions? So
It is a very fine line to walk.
it is. It is.
Um,
I think what we have settled on, because I do far more, from the hip type
mhm.
gaming, and that's why the CKG for me is a great book because it's filled with all this just weird little information that when I'm from the hipping it, if I need some clarity on something, I can just go into that and go, okay, so here's a discussion of glacial caves. This is what a glacial cave actually is,
Yeah.
so I can go read about it and have some kind of direction that's not rules based. But I think what we're going to try to do is just post a bunch of videos of us running games where we're kind of running it from the hip. So that, because I think so many people, younger people particularly, or even people new to the hobby, they go to YouTube immediately. I want to play this role playing game. How do I play it? So they watch these kind of professional DMs or professional players, and it's all structured. And I think that's kind of, it's not anathema to what we do, but it certainly is a little bit contrary to just, you know, showing up and
Yeah.
having at it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, I mean, I'm not a huge I don't know if you've heard the term quantum ogre, where it really doesn't matter which, it's a new term that people are kicking around, it doesn't matter which path the players take, the ogre will materialize on whatever path the players take.
Yes,
Right?
I know.
Schrodinger's ogre.
Yeah,
And I'm not a huge fan of that. Like, I want my players' choices to have meaning. But when it comes to what stats do the ogre have,
yeah.
I mean, I can make that up. One of my buddy Richard and I are always like, if I'm running a game, you know, a cave bear can be reskinned as just about anything, and I can keep the cave bear stats in my head, and you're not going to know. You're just going to know this thing's tough, and how I describe its attacks. I mean, that's all I need. Like, I'm very fluid and free. Before I go any farther, hey everybody in the chat, to John and Grom and Crane Wrights and Tink, and I know I missed some. To Mark and Sarsa, welcome to Beyond the Table. So, before we get into the Umbrage Saga, which is really what I want to talk about, I have a very deep and abiding love of everything you guys have put together with on the Umbrage Saga. The Hermit finished up real well. When we had you on last, we were like talking about the Hermit. Anything you want to share about the Hermit Kickstarter?
So it did finish very, very well. I was very, very, very happy with that. We are deep in, it's been edited, it's been converted. We're going to do another pass on it, get it in a layout. Wesley Gardner is, we talked about, and we can't talk too much about the Hermit because I don't want to give too much away. Right. But so I sent the description of kind of one of those areas to Wesley Gardner, who did the cover, and he's doing some of the interiors. And I said, okay, this is tough, but this is what I want you to do. And he sent it over, and he got it all wrong. He got it all wrong. So I texted him back, said, hey man, you didn't. It's got to be like this. So the Hermit continues to give even in production. I mean, it's cool stuff. I'm actually I don't know that we're going to make Gary Con. We're working very hard to get it out by Gary Con. Yeah. It'd be the perfect place to debut it, obviously. But I think it's going to be a tough haul. But it is. We're working on it hard.
Awesome! I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see the first PDFs and get it in my hand and get it to the table, because all I've heard about the Hermit is it is weird beyond anything that you could imagine. That Gary just like put anything that came into his imagination in this thing.
Yeah, it is very strange. It has, and it's interesting because at the beginnings of it, there's chunks of it that aren't. Some of it's you'll think, oh, this is just normal game stuff. What is everyone talking about? But there's some weird stuff in it. Absolutely love it.
Yes, hey everybody, Trollza indeed. So
hold on, I've somehow lost our. I've got so many windows open. I don't know what I'm doing at this point.
Oh.
All right, go ahead. There it is.
All right. So let's talk about the Umbrage Saga. It was my first introduction to Castles and Crusades and the World of Aihrde. I was looking for a low-level adventure, and I was at my game store, and I saw The Rising Knight, and loved the cover. I loved the description on the back. Can you give sort of an overview of? I mean, it is a. I sort of describe. Yeah, can you give an overview of the Umbrage Saga for people who may not be familiar with it?
Yeah, it is. It's a huge undertaking. So let me first say that, talking about, like we were talking just a few minutes ago, the different styles of running games, whether you want things heavily quantified or whether you want them a little bit more loose, or whether you can respond to that stuff. So the A series and the Umbrage Saga. So these, when I say the A series, it's the same as the Undying War and the same as the Umbrage Saga. They're all kind of the same animal. We began production of those. A1 was written first back in 2005, I think. I think it was the first adventure that we released for Castles and Crusades.
And that's Assault on Blacktooth Ridge.
Assault on Blacktooth Ridge. And it was the one that we released was 24 pages. Now it grew. I'll get into that a little bit, but the first one was just 24 pages, quick introductory adventure that Davis wrote. It's one of our, I think it's the best thing he's written adventure wise, and I think it's one of the best we've ever produced. And it's got dungeon and overland in town, which is what you want on all of it. And so this thing evolves over time. Now Davis kind of had an idea of what he wanted to do with the A series, and it was basically lead them from the Blacktooth Ridge all the way to Alfstrag.
Yes.
He didn't even know at the time really what Alfstrag was. He hadn't read that sections of the Codex. He's designing Isaiah. He didn't really know. He just knew it was a big Tower of Evil God thing, So he didn't know how he wanted it to end. So he began writing it, and he was at the time. I think me and Mark Sandy were the only full-time employees. Davis was out west doing archaeology digs, so he would write it when he had time. And it just took him forever and a day to kind of start releasing these things. So it kind of coalesced over time into this larger epic journey. Somewhere around A7 or A8, he started asking me lots of questions. He was done with the archaeology. He was here in Little Rock. He was doing other stuff, but still kind of tinkering with the A series. And he wanted to know more about Alfstrag and whatever. He began to put more and more thematic stuff into it that would actually lend itself to a larger adventure. And then by A10, it really had kind of coalesced into everything that's going on with the Vessel of Souls, what's going on with, actually, it kind of coalesced before that because the war begins in A5, I think, where it's clearly, what's his name? His name escapes me. The guy running Alfstrag now.
Is it Corthane?
Yeah, Corthane. It's no, wait. Corthane's the god. It's
right. Yeah, not Corthane. It begins with a C. Why is my brain dying?
Coburg the Undying. Is that
yes.
his name? Coburg the Undying. Yes. Okay. Which is ironic. Thank you, Crane. He is my absolute favorite NPC. So Coburg's roots are deep in the 80s. When we were running games back in college, Coburg was one of their main foes. So this guy, awesome. This guy has been at my table forever. And I love him because he's kind of cowardly. He's really not like a brave guy at all. He doesn't want to lose. He's not going to be the guy. There's no last stand with Coburg. He's gone. He's
the guy who always has the escape plan. The lever behind the altar that's gonna.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Just to get out of there. And so I love the concept of that NPC. But so by A5 or so, Davis is really coalescing into this war, this larger war. By A10, he brings into the love affair inside of it, and that's when I took over with A10. So I wrote A10, 11, and 12, and then I'll continue. He's actually very excited. We talked yesterday about continuing the A series, and he jumped on board, full bore. He sent me tons of notes this morning. I think somebody put on Twitter. He's super jazzed about the next because we've done through A17.
You've done through A17, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, the whole idea behind the A series is you bring your characters in at low level, first level at A0, and you begin playing. And there's really nothing going on. You fight some gnolls. I think there's some evil fae or something, and a dungeon that you go through. And then A1, you get kind of embroiled in local politics and hunting for the Baron's son, if I recall, and some adventures on the Blacktooth. A2 gets you into a little bit more. A3 is the first time you run into servants of Alfstrag. They're truly servants of Alfstrag, kind of mucking around in the Southern Kingdoms. This is where you kind of learn that and hopefully by this point, you're third and fourth level. Now, for 5th edition, we did a version for 5e that we'll sell it until we're sold out, but it's a little bit more stringent. And you go, I think when you finish A0, you're raised in level to 2nd level, and then so forth and so on.
Yeah.
In the CNC version, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
There's no way conceivably that you can just play the adventure as is and gain a level. And when you go, it's just not going to happen. I mean, there's not enough monsters and treasure to spread around. So the idea there is, one, you either give them experience points for role playing or whatever, or you just start doing your own side adventures. You start exploring the Barren Wood and the Foulwood and the Blacktooth Ridge and the Frusan River and all of these things, doing your own side quests, building your own stories, all in around this epic tale that your characters are thrust into. So by the A3 and A4, you're kind of into the larger war. You're beginning to see pictures of what's going on. And you realize that Coburg the Undying, who now controls Alfstrag, is sending armies south, trying to rebuild this portion of his long gone master's empire. in New Enotia. And you start running afoul of these creatures. As you go up in the A series, A6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you start running into more and more powerful of these minions until it leads you to the wasting way across the great swamps that lead to the gates of Alstrad. And A12 ends right, the Undying War ends right there at the gates of Alstrad. Either you go in, or I wrote a little epilogue in the Undying War that you can encounter Coburg and wrap this all up. If you're done with it, you don't want to do the big mega dungeon. This is how you can wrap it up and blah blah blah. But the whole story is basically one of these characters begin just normal adventures and get pulled into this epic war that is going on around them and that has been going on around them for decades. And their involvement can be as much as they want or as little as they want. They don't, it's not, you can keep doing adventures without being forced to fight Coburg and all this stuff. You can just keep going forward. But it's basically you start off with just these nobodies and you slowly get pulled into this huge epic story that's going on around you.
One of the things that I tried to tease out as I was talking about the A series is that it is this, much like Castles and Crusades, it is this wonderful blend of sort of 1E design and play aesthetics and sort of a modern view of gaming. And so, right, A1 has very much a kind of a keep on the Borderlands feel to it. And I love that about it. And yet, right, A17, and we're continuing to look at it, it also, the first 5 to 7 really are kind of modular. I could just, I've taken them and just dropped them in things. But now we're kind of seeing, okay, once you get to about there, all right, now we're on what, more modern game design would call an adventure path, right? These adventures are kind of leading from one to another, and you do need to flesh them out. But still, A1 has a town fully fleshed out with a bunch of adventure hooks. You have all the overland places to go to, and then you have kind of the central dungeon. It's more than just, hey, here's the adventure. Here's a whole starting region for your players.
A1, it's one of the reasons I think it's one of the best things we've ever put out. It's fascinating to me because you could go into A1 and, like I said, the town's fully stocked. It's got the Halfling Tavern, it's got the regular tavern, it's got the Baron and the Baron's family, and the history of the Baron's family and all of that stuff. And then the Ridge itself, of course, is this really vibrant, overland region that you can plunder and hack around. And there's no real adventure in A1. It's just you come to town and this is the people and this is the environment. And you could build that. I think I probably played, I ran A1. I know we'd put A2 and A3 out. We never actually made it to A2 back in the day. I ran A1 just game after game after game after game because they just kept going back to the Ridge and exploring it and then beyond the Ridge, and the rest of it just kind of faded away. What's fascinating to me about A1, the original version that Davis turned over. So Davis would always, I would say, he still does this. I'd say, Davis, we need 18,000 words for this project. So he would turn over 36,000 words, of course. So we'd have to sit there and figure out what we'd cut. Because in the old days, it's not like it is now. We had a contract with our printer that we would get X discount if we made 24-page softcover saddle stitch books. So anything over 24 pages, we lose our discount, right? So it was adamant, and you can look at all of our old adventures; they're all 24 pages, no matter what, because that's what the contract.
Right.
That's how we saved money. So we had to cut tons of stuff out for Davis's A1 because he wrote so much. A2, we did the same thing too, but so it just sat in a vault forever, and I can't remember at what point. I know it's after we opened our own print shop. We added it. A1 became a 48-page adventure. Yep. So even the original one was smaller, still insanely playable, and that's the one I played in. And then the one that we have now, that chapter 1 or whatever we've ended up calling it, is chapter 1. Chapter 2 in the 5th edition version, because their adventure paths do chapters, and in the CNC version, it's still A1. We kept the A1 on there, but yeah, now it's just full of all kinds of random stuff from Davis's mind.
Well, and what I love about that is, I don't know if you're familiar with. Oh yeah, we talked about this. Hyperborea.
Yeah,
I'm running a group through the Anthropophagy of Zimbala. and that's another module where it's just, if you just play through it, you're only really getting about half the use out of the module, because there's all these other adventure sites and there's all these other plots. And I love modules that give you more than just, hey, here's point A through point M, you know.
Right.
And
No, I'm right. I'm right with you that I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, no, no.
One of my favorite adventures, and I talk about it all the time, is from the TSR days, is T1, the Village of Hum.
Yeah.
And I've taken that village, I've integrated it. Funny, we're going towards the A series. I started them in Ascalon and moved them north into Hamlet, and Hamlet's just, I put it just south of where A0 begins. But and they're actually going to skip A0 and 1 and go to A2. But that Hamlet, just in the last 2 years, we have probably had 5 little adventures around Hamlet, because it's perfect for that, right?
Yeah.
It's got all these NPCs. I've got terrain. That's really all I need. Now
Yeah.
I can just do, whatever I want to do.
Yeah, a couple of encounter tables, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and that's really the hope for adventures like the Undying War, and most especially A1. Now the rest of them are a little bit more goal oriented, but A1 is not at all. So the hope is that, especially for younger GMs or new GMs that have come in, CKs that have come in, that they can sit down and play this stuff and go, oh, it just fires in their imagination. Oh, I want to do this. But what if this halfling was doing this?
Yeah.
Because that's where you really want to be, I think, at the table, both players and CKs, where everybody's kind of pushing that envelope of their imagination. Because once they unlock it, they just go.
Right. And it's not as easy to do as it sounds, right? To capture all of that, especially in 18,000 to 36,000 words. Yeah. It's actually remarkably difficult to capture all of that in a succinct and usable form.
It really is. Davis is the master at that. Now he will, if you give him much paper, he will write forever. But he loves conjuring these ideas that are just ideas in passing. And this is where, and the stuff he sent over for Alfstrag this morning was just fantastic. And this is where this type of adventure, you really can't take. For those who don't know, Alfstrag is a tower where the god Unklar dwells, and it's 3,000 feet tall and like 1,500 feet wide. It's just monstrous, 21 levels. There's no way I can detail every room and hall. It's just not. It's just no way. It's insane. But this is where you want this kind of a broad brushstroke to fire the imagination of, so that when a CK reads that, they're like, oh yeah, man, I could do this.
Yeah.
And when the players, and this is man, this might be even more important than the CK having that kind of revelation. When the players hear that description, they're like, oh, this, what is this? I should try this. Yeah. And it leads them down whatever unknown path that they're on.
Yeah, I'll steal a term from 13th Age. Their Dragon Empire, they describe it as half-baked. They're like, they want to give you just enough of an empire that makes you want to go, oh, I want to go see what's over there. And the GM goes, excellent. I can hang whatever I want on this hook. I have broad strokes, and I can move forward with that. And again, it's really difficult to do. Davis sounds, I'm the same way. If I'm given a word limit, I'll run right up and maybe add a couple of extra things, counting on my editor.
Right.
I say we're noble writers in the same way that a noble gas will expand to fill the available volume that is given to it.
I'll let Davis know.
Yeah, we're noble writers, right? Yeah. All right, so kind of one of my favorite things about the A series is all of the Fae material that is put in there. And I have to say hats off to all of you, because the Fae in the A series feel like Fae from Germanic and Nordic myth and fairy tales. They don't just feel like another monster that you're encountering. They're otherworldly. There's the dreaming sea that gets pulled into that. There's all of this very, I'll use a Tolkien term, very enchanting nature to the Fae that is sadly not typically what we get when we encounter the Feywild or elves and fairies in other writing. How did you guys approach that? Like, how did you manage to capture that feeling of enchantment and otherworldliness? Was that something that was really important to you?
So I can't. I'll answer a little bit for Davis because I kind of know his process. I'm not 100% certain. Davis is pretty vocally hammers most tropes. I mean, and he makes fun of Faye all the time, but he uses them a lot. I mean, he uses them an awful lot. And so for Davis, I think, and he'll have to correct me if I'm kind of misstating this. Way back when I started playing with Davis back in the 70s, it was very, very, very quickly that the monsters began to develop personalities of their own.
Mm-hmm.
He would read this little stat block in those brown books, and it's very different than then than it is now, because it was very, very different. He would read the stat block and he would start giving these creatures personalities almost. I mean, I remember this way back whenever. And as soon as a CK, you give your monster a personality, you've kind of got a vested interest. Now you kind of know this guy, right?
Yeah.
This is their motivation. This is how they hunt. This is how they live, and all this other stuff. So the Fae for him become this kind of perfect, the perfect vehicle for that, because he's now investing in these strange creatures, whatever backgrounds, personalities, whatever it is that gives them more life to it. And I think that's the direction Davis comes from. And he'd have to correct me. For myself, I absolutely love Fae. I think they're the coolest monsters and the least used, period. And the way I kind of look at them from the larger perspective is kind of like elementals. I try to always look at Fae is just as far from humans. They might look like us, but as far from humans and dwarves and elves as humanly possible. And elementals kind of come to it because they're willful. They have their own desires, and their own desires don't equate to ours. They're not hungry. They don't need to eat. They're not, they're immortal, so they don't see time. They're not in a hurry, or they're in a tremendous hurry to get something done. Just because you're immortal doesn't mean you see the world as this long running tapestry that you have all the time in the world. The opposite is sort of true with Fae, because they know that time is, because it never stops and things change. If you want a garden here, you got to do it now, because it might rain tomorrow and wash all the mud away, right? So Fae to me, they're kind of elemental. I think of them as elemental beings in the sense that they're very otherworldly, and that's what I try to capture. And I try to take any human motivation that I may implant upon Coburg or Luther or whoever, take that away and give these Fae their own, and then they you couple that with, they don't really understand us because we don't make much sense to them.
Yeah.
So the interactions become this kind of both playful and insanely deadly things.
Right, and that's something, you look at the Seelie versus the Unseelie court. You look at all of the myths surrounding the Fae, and it very much is, they don't, we understand them about as well as they understand us, and things can go from fine to deadly in the blink of an eye because they just don't understand what's going on. And I think I like hearing that from game design perspective, because so often it's because it's easy to say, oh, well, this is just like a human that does X. And whether that's a player character, race, or species, whether that's a monster, we use shorthands. And what happens is it basically sometimes can feel like I'm reading about just humans in a different getup. And I don't ever want that to feel like that. I want my elves to feel substantially different and inhuman because they're inhuman. I want my Fae to feel even more removed from the world. Immortal beings just don't have the same. I like how you were like, elementals basically, they don't even care about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because why would they? They don't need any of the things on there.
They don't even have the perspective of that.
Yeah.
I mean, what does the elemental plane of fire look like? It looks very different than ours, right? So they don't even grasp that if a fire elemental is burning something, that it's doing anything than it normally does. It doesn't understand that the tree is being engulfed in flames and turned into, a stick of ash. I think one of the I can give kind of two examples of the way I treat Fae. This is quite a while ago. The first one, characters were very low level. They were in the Blacktooth Ridge. They were in the Darkened Fold, and they're trying to climb up this bluff. And there's this rough ladder kind of skewed into it. And I started describing these little Fae kind of flying around. And they're very cute and they're very pretty and they smell very nice and they're laughing. And started doing a little role playing and they're joking and everything. And I remember Chris's character, Chris, who just role plays like us, he just loves it. He got into it deep. So we're doing all this stuff. Well, one of the Fae thought it'd be funny just to put some oil on one of the rungs. And as soon as the character started having trouble getting up the ladder, then they all started doing it. And then it suddenly went from this kind of funny, playful thing to this highly deadly, because two of the characters just fell into their deaths because it's like a 40-foot level. They just plummeted to death. So it went from this kind of weird descriptive thing to role playing to why are we dying all of a sudden? What is happening? And the Fae were laughing the whole time because they don't know what death is. They have no concept.
No, right? It's not even on their radar.
Yeah, exactly. And that probably the place I put that most emphatically was in the Codex of Aihrde. Now he's not a Fae, but he's a god, and it's Aelor, the sea god. When there's this dwarf who's builds the first ship, and he starts sailing the oceans. His name escapes me at the moment, but he's just sailing all the time. And Aelor sees him, and he doesn't know. This is in the early ages of the world, and he doesn't know. Grace, if you can remember his name, Andoroth. No, Andoroth. Maybe it is Andoroth. Anyway, so the dwarf that Aelor sees this dwarf, and he doesn't know what this thing is that's on his water, right? So he goes up and investigates, and he notices when it comes up that he rocks the boat. Well, the dwarf's like, Andoroth, if that's his name, I can't remember if that's his name or not. He's like, this is challenging. I can do this. I can fight this god on this boat. So he manages the boat, and Aelor's like, oh, this is cool. This is a game. So he starts making storms, and this becomes a whole thing between the two of them. Every time Andoroth or whatever the dwarf is on the sea, here comes Aelor to play around. Well, eventually he makes a storm so great that the dwarf can't overcome it. Ship overturns and he drowns. And Aelor is just kind of following him down under the water, going, "What are you doing?
Yeah,
go back to your boat. What's
That's
happening
right."
Here? And he has to go to one of the other gods to say, "What happened? What's going on?" Because he has no concept of death or ending. Or any of that.
I think I shared.
It's kind of important to put that out.
When we had our last interview, I think I shared the fact that my players. So I'm running this massive 2E game, 2nd edition AD&D game for my friends, and I just stitched all of my modules together into a map. And I was like, well, there's still some blank places, so I put like the A series in the southwest corner, and that's the area they decided to start. And so, sure enough, they're playing through the A series in 2nd edition AD&D.
Awesome.
But they were going to, I think it was, you'll have to apologize. I apologize for my memory. I think it's Fallen Knock, the treasure house. And they had made some deal with a fairy. They traded some stuff, and the fairy gave them this weird token. They're like, what is it? They're like, oh, it'll summon a wall. And they're like, all right, for how long? And they're like, 15. And they're like, huh? And so they're chasing the villain through the dungeon, and they got ambushed by ogres, and they were like, crap, we've already lost 2 people. So the PC, pulls out this thing and activates it, and it's 15 moons. So like they've set, they're fine, like nothing can come through it, but the villain gets away because essentially he had 15 months and he was undead. So he's like, I don't care that I'm stuck in here. I have plenty. I'll just kill everything in here and re-raise it as undead, and I'll still get my plot done. Because they were like, well, what time scale do Fae care about? And it's like, well, sorry guys, you got to go do something else in the world for 15 game months. And they were both amused and very furious about it, because now the guy, they couldn't stop the guy that they were there to stop. And right. I like that feels very Fae-ish for me. Like, no, I don't understand what time, like.
And that's the way it should go. And I think that it probably is not appreciated enough to leave characters a little bit frustrated, or to leave players a little bit frustrated, is perfectly okay. there doesn't have to be, the ending wrapped up in a bow. There can be
Yeah.
all kinds of loose ends. Because it begins to mimic life, because we all have loose ends, right? That
Yeah.
that we that we don't do, and then it becomes this. So that if you play the same characters for 4 or 5 years, and in game time is 10 or 15 years, there's all kinds of adventure hooks
Yeah.
left over. There's this story that's more real than unreal.
Um, I have there have been a couple of sayings that have kind of come up around my table. One of them is if nobody dies, it's not an adventure; it's just an outing. But the other thing is, someone I took this from someone on the internet, and I can't attribute my reference. I apologize, bad scholastic form. But they were like, listen, if you get to the end of your campaign and you won every fight and got everything you wanted, and none of your choices mattered, like you just sat down and rolled dice for a long term, like you should have failures. You should have things that don't make sense at the end. You should have to start a new game with the old players, old PCs as NPCs to go out and deal with, the remnants of the game. And that's how a campaign world gets. My friend calls it gets moss on it, right? It's not just a statue, standing in the forest. It's when Sam and Frodo are walking through the old holds of Gondor as they're heading towards Minas Morgul, and they see all of these statues, but they're broken and they have flowers growing on them. There's this sense that, hey, this has been here a while, and that's that doesn't come out until really your second or third campaign, long-term campaign, right? You've got to let these things grow organically.
You do, and and failure is part of that,
Yeah.
because that it makes the success far better, and it doesn't mean I can't even count. I don't know if I've ever done a TPK. I'm sure that I have, but it doesn't mean you have to slaughter characters all over the place. It just means that things don't work the way they had hoped or wanted to, or whatever, because it can get sloppy, and I think that's good.
My son, he's into video games. He's 11 and a half, and he has just moved from playing kind of the Nintendo style games. He's trying Elden Ring, which is this brutally difficult game, right? Like, it's open world. It feels very much like an old school D&D adventure. You can very quickly wander into places that just you die, and you carry your experience points with you. And if you die before you level up, you've got to go back to the place you died to pick them back up. And if you fail to do that, all of that XP is lost.
Oh, wow.
And what's been interesting watching him is he'll rate, like he'll quit, he'll be in tears. Yeah. And the next day he'll go back to it. When he finally beats that guy, he feels like he accomplished something. Yeah. Like, I'm like, that's good game design.
That's great game design, because at the end of the day, it can't just be success after success after success. It just can't be, and it shouldn't be. And realistically, it won't be if you just let the dice fall where they may. And this is where we joke, on everybody everywhere jokes and argues about the fudging and not fudging. But I'm a huge fan of fudging dice, but I'll fudge both directions. I'll fudge towards the player's character's failure just as quick as I will. I need this to be a little bit more dramatic. It's going to do a little more damage than that, that type of thing. So that goes both ways. And I think that players, once they kind of get into the groove of it, they appreciate it. It is rare that people don't appreciate it.
There was a GM advice book. It started off as a series of articles on Pyramid, back when Pyramid was Steve Jackson Games blog.
That's right.
And it was called Play Dirty. And the long and the short of it was, everyone wants to feel like John McClane, that they've walked over broken glass, they've been, kicked around, they've been beat up, they've had failures and setbacks, but they're still going to get to the end, and that's going to make that so much sweeter. If John McClane just walked through the whole of Nakatomi Plaza, we're not as invested in his story as we are when, again, he's walking barefoot over broken glass and he's stumbling into that last scene looking like he's just been through the ringer.
Your heroes absolutely have to take a beating for it to be interesting. Otherwise, you're just kind of watching a very fancy dance movie, it's just with a bunch of people, doing whatever. and Bruce Willis is probably one of the kings. Harrison Ford too. He's always
Oh
taking the
yeah,
lead.
just
And it makes it a better experience.
it
You know,
does.
to make it to the end.
It
I think that's
does.
really important.
All right, so you've just released the Undying War, which is sort of, I mean, you've had multiple iterations, and I think that's one of the things that in our first interview I was saying that I love so much about uh, Castles and Crusades. It's not, hey, here's a new edition. It's, hey, here's our new printing, and we've refined it a bit. The editing's gotten a little tighter. We've added a little bit more. We've, updated the layout. Now, I mean, I've now got my black and white books over on the shelf there, and I've got my full color books here with, again, I think I was telling you I was in a previous production meeting, and I was like, no, I want to do an updating of the cover of this thing that we're doing. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, and I pulled the Castles and Crusades books up. I'm like, do these look familiar? And they're like, holy crap, those are the AD&D first edition covers. I'm like, yes, like reimagined and updated, and I love them.
Yeah.
So you've had the 24-page, staple bound adventures. I've got the box sets that go all the way to, the Dungeons of Austrag.
Yeah.
And now you've done another repackaging with the Undying War. So can you tell us about why you decided to do an Undying War update, and maybe what's different between the box set versions and the single book version?
So the Undying War originally came out, if I remember the branding we were using at the time. That's not what I had on the wall. I thought I had it on the wall. It's the brown cover that had titling at the top, authors at the bottom, and then a kind of a square picture in the middle.
Yes.
So the original A1 came out in that format. We were contractually obligated. We didn't have to do it, but I made sure that it happened for the discounts to get the 24 pages. So we gutted a bunch of Davis's stuff, and then it came out in that. And so the next several, like A2, A3, and A4, I think all came out in that. Then we switched to the green when the fourth printing came out. Green came out, so we began to switch the series books. And I think at that point we decided to color code things to make it to kind of create a line deal. And the A series color code was blue, I think.
Yep, it was. I remember those ones.
So it's actually very fond of those. I like that color.
Yeah.
The problem we discovered with that, this is a problem with digital printing in general. You can do a run, but when your drums start getting kind of chewed up a little bit, the blues will start to change color.
Yep.
So you do a 500 book run. If you don't swap your color, it gets dicey. So you start getting these kind of off colors. So that created a problem that I think I killed that because that was causing a problem there and in the C series. I want to say the C series was green.
I think so.
Killed that. I think it was. And then we shifted to bleed off the page. That would solve the problem completely. Because now it doesn't really matter if you're A2 and A3. There's no color scheme going on because the colors of the books are graphically different. So if I have an A1 that's got this shade and an A1 that's this shade, whoever picks up A2 is not going to know the difference, right? Because it's a completely bleed off. There's no colors. So that's when we switched to that. And we did that on the 5th edition books because we were just getting into the 5th edition line. And I thought, I want to give everyone this package. So we created these box sets. And that's where, so the Castles and Crusades A series never came out individually with full bleed off covers. It went immediately to those box sets. We created two, right? Yeah, we created two, A0 to A5.
Three. There's In the Shadow of Austrag, Journeys to Austrag, and Dungeons of Austrag.
I keep forgetting because it's currently out of print. We will fix that soon. But so we did the box sets because there's so many maps, and we wanted the area map and all of that stuff to make it a little bit more playable. And then they sold crazy well. I really didn't know that they would, but they did. People loved them. The boxes are really stout. They're really nice.
I've got mine.
Yes.
Right there.
So
it's
one
solid.
of the issues that we ran into with those boxes, and if you had one of the other ones, you might be able to see this. So they offered a dream coat thing on it, which gives one. I think it was the first one had this very nice glossy look. Looks really, really good. But they discontinued the dream coat at some point. So then we started getting some that looked really glossy and some that didn't. So the quality on those were not even the quality, the line look. I wasn't super happy with it. So we stepped back from everything. And about this time, the fifth edition is exploding. This is before the OGL was doing its thing. And I thought, I kept hearing this word that you had mentioned earlier, Adventure Path. Adventure Path. I thought, okay, this A series is tailor-made for an adventure path.
It really is.
You and I were thinking just alike. And I thought, so let's do this. Let's jam this all together, make one book, give it to the fifth edition community, create an adventure path, and design it and lay it out just like 5e players are accustomed to and comfortable with, so they can dive into this really badass series without feeling like they've left home. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of one of the things we like to do anytime we're doing anything for another game system. We don't really want it to be a vehicle to come play our game. That would be great if it was. What we really want is the customer to have a good time having, whatever they got. So we were deep into that whole mess when the OGL did its little to-do. So we had to kind of rush through this, wrap up the Undying War, and get it out. And while we're doing this, so many of the people who had backed the Undying War everyone was very angry at Wizards of the Coast, because of the OGL debacle.
Something happened, yeah.
Something happened. People were upset, whatever. And so we started getting a lot of requests for, can I get a CNC version? And after about the 30th email or text or DM, I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to do it anyways. Yeah. Let's just do it. So Peter Bradley had to lay out the 5th edition version in this style and CNC.
Oh, no.
At the same time, it was really funny. Well, it's funny for me. It's probably not funny for him, but it amused me. So we ended up just putting it in this edition that is now, which is a large hardcover, 350 pages or whatever, which immediately kind of sets it aside from the box sets, which I'm very, very fond of. Now, all of this, in the midst of all of this, the Codex of Aihrde came out. And I remember when the Codex of Aihrde came out, so there's a fold-up map, this map that's behind me inside the Codex. So we got a new production assistant over there at Walsworth where we get our hardcovers printed. They're fantastic people. But she texted me in the middle, and she said, the only way we can put this map in here is to shrink wrap it. And I was like, no. We've done this before. We don't shrink wrap it. I don't know I didn't know what it was called. I said, you do some kind of tabbing in there. I'm not sure what it is. It just kind of glues in the back. So they glued it in the back with 5 drops of glue.
Yeah, the little rubbery stuff.
Glue.
Okay. So no.
They were, yes.
Oh, no.
Now it comes off very easily. It doesn't tear the mat, but it's on some of them, about 10%, it's leaving this round circle.
Mine's got the little round circles on them, yeah.
So you know what I'm talking
about?
Yeah. It was supposed to be that tab, the little, what is that, sticky tab stuff, whatever that stuff is called, you hang posters with. We just miscommunicated. That's as much my fault as it is her. It's just whatever. Yeah. It can happen. So Davis and I were sitting down Saturday. We had a production meeting about all kinds of other stuff that we're working on. And we keep making these books that have all these maps in them. So I came up with the idea, and I got the go-ahead from the printer today. We're not going to do tabs or glues or box set. We're going to have in the back of the book this handy little
pocket.
The maps will go in the pocket, glue to nothing, and you can have all your maps there. So currently, the thinking here is we're not going to do more boxed sets for Alf's Track. We're going to do the pockets in the back. That is what we're thinking, which it bothers me on a level because I really wanted 5 box sets, with all of this content as we finish up. And we may end up doing that anyways, but at the moment, we're looking at doing hardcovers going forward. And we would have done the Undying War. I don't think it has a map in the back, or does it? No, it does not. I can't remember. There's so many products floating around. I don't know what's going on. But that is the plan currently going forward. But that's its long production history. The interesting thing about, I was in the warehouse the other day looking for The Hermit, actually, last month when we just put the Kickstarter. I needed a copy of it, what we did back in 2005.
Yeah.
My disc copy was gone. And so I'm just digging around, and the back of that warehouse is crazy. I mean, I think it started orderly, but not really. And it's just everywhere now. I mean, it's just all over the place. So it's like an archaeological dig, and I kept finding versions of the A1 or whatever. Oh, look, this is what we did 15 years ago. Put it back in a box or whatever. It's really kind of funny.
One of the other friends of the show is Rick Meintz from Chaosium, and they call him Mr. Suitcase because he has, multiple versions of everything Chaosium has put together
Nice.
because he's just one of those collectors. And so, people are always, going to him and going, well, do you have this? Do you have that? And, it's the got it, need it, got it sort of
Yeah.
mentality. So are there any main big differences between if I've got the box set, because I'm gonna order the Undying War and do a review of it on my channel, but just as a teaser, is there anything majorly different between the two? I know it's full color, right?
So the big thing, the two big things are the full color and the which makes it ridiculously heavy, and the maps. We hired Bill Edmonds to come in and redo all of the maps.
Oh wow.
Part of the archaeology of TLG that is frustrating to me and to Davis, and I know Peter, is Peter's drawn these maps since 2003, and his styles have changed. So when the A series came out, in 2005 was A1, and 2007 was A2, and on down the line, the maps look completely different as you walk
Mm-hmm.
down, through the ages. But all of them are redone. All of the maps are redone in the same style. Bill Edmonds did all of those, and he went through and kind of meticulously made sure everything lined up. I was answering all kinds of crazy questions, especially in that pyramid in A3. It's like this room is above this room, but there's no ladder or stairs. I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. That was 20 years ago. So I'd have to go back in the text and read it and text Dave and say, "What were you thinking here?" And he's like, "I don't know." Whatever. So a little bit of clarity, but it's really the maps, the full color, the whole 9 yards. And the books turned out insanely beautiful. Zoe came in and did a ton of art for it, and Jason Walton did a ton of art for it, and all of it. I went through and had the art kind of specific for the story, so it fits with every. It's just really, I'm super happy with the way the Undying War has
Very cool.
played.
That's awesome. And you said you added an epilogue, so that.
Yeah. So this, and I got called on this, one of the guys in my Twitch stream, and I'm feeling really bad about it, and I'm going to fix it. And I'm not throwing aspersions. Everybody's got their own, their own journey that they're taking, but we all watched or we all read the 5 books of the Game of Thrones, and we're just waiting, right? What are we, 20 years now? We're 20 years now that we're waiting for the end of this thing. Well, I've kind of done that with Abstract. I got the first 5 levels and I stopped. So that's bothered me, but I'm not going to be able to get that done super fast. So what I did for those people who are playing the Undying War, who don't want to wait 15 years for the rest of the stuff to come out, now I created an epilogue that gives them 2 or 3 options on how to interact with Coburg and end it, or to continue on, or to do their own thing if they want to.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about that for a little bit because when we were talking initially at Gamehole Con, you were saying that you have plans to go forward. You just said that we've got 3 box sets and you just mentioned 2 more. So what is in store as the A series continues?
So what happens next? And this is the way we did. Peter and I did the A13 through 17, right? I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
The way we did that is I wrote out an outline. So this is huge. And the thing to understand about Alstrag is it's not just a dungeon. It's a dungeon it's a city that is still occupied by creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have a creature in this section who doesn't like this wall. He knocks this wall down and he builds a road here and all kinds of stuff like that. There's permanent features, but it's constantly changing and it's huge. And I want it to be a living thing. I want when you go into it, if you go into level 1, you adventure for 3 months and you're in level 4, you go back to level 1, it's refilled. It's not empty, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't stay empty. Something in that vacuum, something goes.
Right.
Or maybe not, is however the CK wants it to go. So what I do is I draw a broad outline of stuff, and then I give Peter these ridiculous maps that only Peter can decipher because I'm a horrible artist. I'm absolutely terrible at drawing anything. But he pieced it together, and then we just kind of shoot this map back and forth until it was all fleshed out the way I wanted it. And that's how we did level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Well, it breaks down about level 4 because at that point, there's ramps, stairs, whatever that goes from level 4 to level 15, from level 13 to level 6, or all those in between. So there's all kinds of stuff. So I had to back off, and he tried. We were working on the next one, the 6th level, whatever that is, and we got about halfway through it. I said, oh, we got to stop. I got to figure out a way to do the schematics on this so that if we put this one out, we don't have to come back and fix it when I'm working on the A whatever 22.
Yeah.
And I got to fix all this stuff. So that held us up. That's where the project stopped about a year and a half ago or whenever I was working on it. But I don't know where I was 2 weekends ago. I think I was up on the farm with Davis. I was outside or something, and I was just kind of thinking about Abstract. Like, what I got to get this moving. What am I going to do with this thing? And I've decided, because at this point, there's 21 levels. I've done 5.
Yep.
So there's A0 through A12, and then there's 21 more adventures after that, right? So if you do 1 adventure per level, so it's going to be A37, is that right? Some A33 or whatever it would be, something, because there's 13, whatever.
Yeah, you're at A17 is out, and then you've got 21 minus 5, 16 more levels. So yeah, 33.
Yeah, so A33. So that's, and then there's the trenches underneath Abstract. That'll be the big one that comes after that. So I think the way I planned it out, I could probably open the files. It's 3 more box sets, 5 levels of box, I believe is what I was going to do. And then, 4 boxes. And then the last box is going to be the Aihrdes, which is on the top, and the trenches, which is underneath Abstract. But we may end up doing hardcovers on those. But what I'm going to do going forward, and I'm pretty excited about this, I'm not going to write each level independently. I'm going to write them all simultaneously. So I'm going to go in. I've already written the outline of each level. I know kind of what it looks like and what's there. I'm going to take that outline, and each one's about 3 or 4 or 5 paragraphs. I'm going to expand the outline to 2 pages on each one as I go through. And then Davis is going to join me as well, and we'll start putting in features that we want to add to it. And then when we get these things well developed, then we can kind of decide, we can get with Peter and then start wrapping the thing up a lot. I'm torn on the box sets. I want to keep doing them, but I got to make sure they look the same so that when they're on your shelf, which is another reason to finish this thing faster, because if I take 2 years, they're going to buy new equipment and production.
It's going to change everything up.
Change everything. Yeah, it's very frustrating.
So is there a plan to do a Dungeons of Abstract book that kind of comes next in the Undying War to do, because I think, does the Undying War go through A11 or A12?
It goes through A12, and I think, so if we do hardcovers, we kind of got to decide the size of it. And I haven't looked at Dungeons in a few months. I think Dungeons is 144 pages or 132 pages or something like that, which 96 is the bare minimum you want to do a hardcover, and really you don't want to do it at 96. 144 to about 256, I think, is where you want to land. So I got to break it apart and make sure that each hardcover is worth its hardcover status, if that makes sense.
That's fair, yeah.
So probably I will get the next level done and put that one in the Dungeons, though I may not. We'll have to look at it and see.
Awesome.
That's content that's out. It's available. It's not available. It's out, but it's just not available at the moment.
Well, I mean, it's available on PDF.
It is available on PDF, yeah. And I need to probably just get the box set back out, and now that the Undying War is out. But it's one of those. It's one of the many, many things we're working on around here.
Well, Steve, any final thoughts on, or that you'd want to share about, the Umbrage Saga, the A series? What's next for Troll Lord Games? Like, just anything that you would want to share?
So I'll say that I would definitely go check the A series out. If you haven't played it, I would definitely go check it out. It really has. We tightened it up a little bit so that for the new CKs, or those who don't like to go off script, it's a little bit better than it used to be. But it really is the perfect kind of playing ground to help you not so much learn. We're not going to teach you how to do it, how to go off on your own, but to go off on your own, because you almost have to by necessity, right?
Right.
When you're playing the A series, because there's so many things going on, and it's not even so much the way it's written or the way you're running it. It's what your players are going to do, because they're going to you're going to describe something from A3, and they're going to be like, wait, what? And they're going to want to go investigate that, and you're going to learn that there's only 2 paragraphs, and you've got to flesh this out. So I think that the Undying War is an extremely, extremely good tool for learning how to push the boundaries of what you can do as a GM. And I think that's one of the things, one of the major philosophies of Castles and Crusades, is to encourage people to unleash their imagination. I contend that 99 out of 100 gamers are insanely imaginative, and you don't need to curb their imagination whatsoever. You give them just a little bit and they will. And I've seen it. I mean, I started running a table, that's 5 years ago now, of just young people, all came from video games.
Yeah.
And they were all a little reluctant, what is this? What is this? And they kept looking for parameters and, trying to find a rule. And I could, no, you can try it, whatever.
Yeah.
And within like 18 months, it is a completely different table.
Yeah.
They are like, it's like the Wild West with
Yeah.
what they're doing, because they're new and they haven't, all the stuff that you and I have played through a dozen times. It's all brand new to them.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They're trying.
I just yesterday, I don't know what I'm getting into, but just yesterday I went to my son's school and I pitched a role-playing game club. And we went from, the principal was like, I don't know if anybody's going to do this, to how many people can you have? And now we're going to have to turn kids away because there's only so much I can do.
Right.
And I can't wait to see what these kids come up with, because
it's one, I think people are just crazy imaginative, and if you let them be that way, they're gonna go that way. I think also too that people my age, your age, we tend to discount younger people who play video games. We tend to think, well, they're just video game players.
Yeah.
These people are gamers. I mean,
Yeah.
they've probably gamed more hours than we have, even in 40 and 50 years. They're crazy good at what they do, and they love it. And they will play any type of game you put in front of them because of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the role-playing game is an absolute natural fit for young people. And I think setting up a game club is fantastic.
Yeah.
You need to reach out to us. We actually have a program for any school game clubs. We just send you a voucher and send you a bunch of stuff for free so you can get started. That's somewhere on the website. Chuck would have to direct it, but we definitely can get your game club.
That would be awesome. I'll reach out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said Chuck?
Yeah. Holler at Chuck or Grace one, and they'll. It's on the website somewhere. I'm not sure where. It's on there. I know it's on there somewhere.
Awesome. I will definitely do that, because I want to. I mean, obviously, Iconic is one of Iconic's founding guiding lights. Is there are so many great games.
Yeah. And
there's already so many channels dedicated to, the more widely recognized, like, brand names, Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu and all of this. I wanted Iconic to be the place where you can come and find out about other great games that you may not have heard of. And so I'm not telling this to the school, but I'm looking at Savage Worlds, I'm looking at Castles and Crusades, and I'm trying to build up their library with a lot of games that they can share and then take out and just farm a whole new, crop of young gamers who are like, yeah, no, I grew up playing Castles and Crusades, or I was in this game club and just did a bunch of Savage Worlds stuff. So,
and that's actually as important, I think, as like Steam. These guys get on Steam and you order just this wide variety of games that are in no way related to one another.
Yeah.
Well, role-playing games aren't any different. I mean, this one isn't any better than that. They're different, right? So you get them, you play them, and when you play this one, you play Castles and Crusades, you think, oh, this is pretty cool. And you get into Savage Worlds, oh, wait a minute, so we could do it this way, and you play Dungeon Crawl Classics, oh, wait a minute, we can go this way. I think that the idea that you're only going to play this, or you should only have them expose them to this is nuts. Because there's some good games out there.
There is, the old, was it Mark Twain? If you only have a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yes, yeah,
right.
That was Mark Twain.
Right. We don't have to have that in the gaming industry, right? We don't have to keep hammering our favorite game into a new form that it wasn't really designed to,
right?
Because there are just a ton of great companies and creators who are just so creative and are like, I like role-playing games, but I really want it to do this. And so therefore they made a game that's their passion, and you can share in that. And
whatever mood you're in, I want to play this type of game. I want to play, Shadow Dark. I want to play whatever it is. There's innumerable games that can fit whatever mood, whatever style
Yeah.
you want to do, and you don't have to marry to any one of them. Yeah, I do. I have to say real quick, or everyone will yell at me. Chuck will really yell at me. We do have a new Kickstarter coming online in March, maybe late February. It's the the Gary Gygaxian Fantasy World Series. It will be the reprinting of his 7 classic volumes of world building and game design that he wrote and edited back in the early 2000s.
Oh man, my copy of his book of names is falling apart. So when that goes live, we'll make sure to shout it from the iconic rooftops, because that is a great series, and I'm glad that you guys are bringing that back. Is that I'm assuming that's the next in the line of the Gygaxian classics that you guys are being able to put back out into the world.
Yes, that was one very close to his heart. That's the third. The first was, of course, Gigsburg, and then the second was the Hermit, and now is the GFW series. And this one was very, very close to his heart. And I think we might be able to wrangle more than just the 7. We'll see. I'm in those files now. He had completed or mostly completed another 3. So we will see what what we can conjure in the next few weeks. But yeah, I'm super, super excited about that.
Excellent. Well, insert "take my money here" image, because I'm really looking forward to those. Well, Steve, thanks for joining us here on Iconic again. Hopefully, we'll have you on more in the future. It's just always great to sit down and chat with you.
It's great being on here, and I promise I won't be late next time.
Don't worry about it.
I'm going to give my schedule to Chuck and Grace and make sure that
not a problem.
M&T.
As I said, I was like, "Oh no, I'm running late," so it was totally all right. All right, everybody. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. This has been Beyond the Table, and we'll see you all later. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot.